Hello, people who watch my YouTube channel for some reason. So, this video is a little different than the things I've been doing more recently, although admittedly I haven't made a video in like forever, but still. I like talking about movies, but I don't maybe watch that many of them really. And then I get like, oh, I should watch this movie in order to make a video about it, and then like I don't want to do it, and then I don't do it. But one thing that I do a lot of, regardless, is read books. And it has come to my attention that there are people who talk about books on YouTube. So maybe about a month ago, I spent a couple of weeks like obsessively watching BookTube videos. They were only made by two people, but they were fun. I like books. But I was, full of my own opinions on the subject. And I thought, well, you know what, I'm always reading like at least one book, usually two books, and I would like to talk to a bunch of strangers about them. So this video is essentially just me just quickly reviewing the books that I've read in the last like month and a half. But in the future, I think it would be interesting to talk about books I've read further in the past, or whatever. I mostly read science fiction, I mostly read older books, and, but I do have a fair amount of variety in what I read. Like what I'm reading right now as I record this is more of a fantasy steampunk novel. But anyway, that's sort of, I just wanted to introduce this video. That's what it's about, and maybe I'll be making more videos about books in the future. So, yeah. Allons-y. Okay, so I realize I said in the introduction that I mostly read science fiction, and it's mostly older books, and then all of the books I talk about in this video were written post 2000, and like none of them are science fiction, so whatever. Maybe next time. So I just finished reading The Yiddish Policeman's Union by Michael Chabon, which I just found one day at the library, not knowing it existed before that very moment. It's fantastic. Like, it is just, oh my god, this is such a good book. Like, I think quality of writing-wise, it's one of the best books I've read, although that's mostly because I tend to stick to genre fiction that, is never going to win the Pulitzer. And this guy won the Pulitzer, but for a different book. I mean, no offense, but, like, a book does not have to have beautiful writing for me to love it. Of course. But this has, like, that added advantage. But anyway, this is, as you can probably tell from the title, it's about a cop, and he's Jewish. But, it's about a murder mystery, essentially, and it's an alternate history, which takes place in roughly, I guess, when the book was written, but, like, the difference in history is that the nation of Israel in, like, 1948 collapsed, and so this whole Jewish diaspora, instead of moving there, ended up moving to a territory in Alaska, which of course was not a state yet, which they call the Sitka District. And there's a couple of million people living there at the point when this book happens, about 60 years later. And essentially the U.S. government said, okay, you can have this territory, but after 60 years it's going to revert to being part of the U.S., and y'all are getting kicked out, basically. So the main character of this book, Meyer Landsman, is a police detective working in Sitka, and one day a fellow occupant of the shitty hotel where he lives is shot. And this book really goes to a lot of places I wasn't expecting, I guess, and I completely loved it. I thought it was just absolutely fantastic. I like Landsman as a character a lot. He's an utter disaster of a person, but is trying And that's kind of how you get my love for a fictional character often, is they're a disaster, but they're trying. And, yeah. Like, you should read this. It's really good. Oh my god. Today, this morning, I finished listening to Killers of the Flower Moon, The Osage Murders, and the Birth of the FBI by David Grann. Yeah, so this is nonfiction, obviously, and it's about a case in the 1920s where a bunch of members of the Osage Nation, I guess, were murdered because they owned the rights to oil underneath the land where they lived in Oklahoma. And, some people, you know, they got rich off of it, and then some people wanted to get their rights to the oil themselves. And, like, there was this whole thing where you couldn't actually buy those rights, you had to inherit them. So it was kind of a complicated mess. But, yeah, it happened in the 1920s. And, of course, I mean, I'd never heard of it, but the book was really interesting. I think it was, you know, it was solid. It wasn't, like, the best thing I've ever read, but it was fine. And, it tells you the story. And the final section of the book actually goes through the author traveling to Osage County, Oklahoma, in the present day, or, you know, when he was writing the book a couple years ago, and meeting some people, and, like, actually he goes through some research that he did. So most of the book is about the FBI case into the murders of one particular family, but he discovered through looking through a lot of just paperwork from the time that a lot more people were murdered, and it's likely that there are just a lot of killers that completely escape justice. So it's pretty depressing. Also, spoilers, I guess. But, spoilers for history. Yeah, no, it was good. It looks like he also wrote the Lost City of Z, which they made a movie of that, didn't they? I don't know anything about that. Anyway, yeah, so it's solid, and if you want to learn about the subject, then this is a good way to do it. Let's Talk About Love by Claire Kann, or Can, maybe. So this is a step outside my usual comfort zone with books, because it's YA, and it's basically just about, like, relationship dramas, and will Alice, who is adorable, end up with Takumi or not? Also, the reason I read it is because Alice is asexual, and that's kind of, like, why I heard about it in the first place. She's also bi. And I just love the design of how they've made the book have the colors of the Ace Pride flag, like, purple, white, and she's, like, well, her hair is black. Yeah, so I liked it, but it's definitely not what I would normally read. I mean, not only, like I said, is it sort of a romance slash friendship and family kind of drama that she has. She's in college, she's trying to figure her life out. She doesn't want to be a lawyer, but her parents really want her to be a lawyer. And she's also having drama with her friends who she lives with. They're getting married soon. It's getting kind of like, they're trying to figure out this next step of their life and how she's going to fit into it. And she meets this guy at work, where she works at the library, named Takumi, and he is, like, unbearably cute. And I liked him, and I liked her, and I thought they were cute together. Okay, so it's not the sort of thing I normally read, though. And also, from what I've said, you could probably gather it's also, like, set now, and I very rarely read things that are set now, unless there's some sort of strange twist to it, or it's about, like, murder. But yeah, no, I liked it, and, also, something I think's interesting about it, here's the author, I hope you can see that, is that it was published by Swoon Reads, which I've never heard of, but, I gather you, like, submit your manuscript to this website, and people who belong to the website can read it, and then, like, every once in a while, one of them is chosen to be published. So that's how this got out here. It's pretty, like, casual writing, but it's pretty cute. Like, if that's the kind of thing you're into, I'd give it a go. Yeah, and Alice is, she's a fun character. She's very cute, so, you know, very light reading. Emperor of the Eight Islands by Leanne Hearn. This is a fantasy book set in medieval Japan, but, like, there's magic. And, I pretty much just got it from the library because, well, it's part of a series of 4, and they all kind of look similar, so they were all just, like, sitting next to each other, and I thought it was sort of pretty. I didn't really like it that much. Like, I don't think it was bad or anything, it just really wasn't my style, I guess. Like, I felt like it was kind of, the way it was told was really detached, I thought, from the story, or from the characters. I mean, I don't guess I regret reading it, really, but I probably am not going to read any more of the series, you know, because once I finished it, I was just like, well, I'm not really that curious about what's going to happen next. But yeah, it's part of this series called The Tale of Shikanoko, who is this, like, teenage boy. I don't know, he's about adult, kind of, at that point where he's becoming officially an adult by the standards of the time that he lives in, so he's like 17. And, he's supposed to, like, inherit this estate or whatever, but his uncle pushes him off a cliff and tells everybody he died so that he can have it. And meanwhile, Shikanoko ends up getting, like, rescued by this weird wizard who lives in the forest who, like, does this weird magic that, like, connects Shiko to, like, this stag spirit kind of thing, and he has, like, mask that he wears, and there's a lot of just, like, strange magic, and not a lot of asking people if they're okay with the strange magic being done to them. But as far as I can tell where the story's going after this, it's just kind of getting into a lot of, there's a war that starts, and there's a lot of, like, political fighting because the emperor was old and he dies, and then this, like, priest wants to raise up his second son as opposed to his first son who would become the emperor. So, like, the titular Emperor of the Eight Islands isn't really in it that much. Like, the old one dies, his son is murdered, and then his grandson is, like, 5 or something, and doesn't show up until, like, 3/4 of the way through the book anyway. So, I don't know. I mean, it was okay. If it sounds like your kind of thing, at least it's, you know, it's not, like, medieval fucking England again. At least it's, like, Japan. That's different. But I'm probably not going to read any more of the series. Because, you know, I don't want to. Another book, The Essex Serpent by Sarah Perry. So this one was like literature, I guess, because I'm pretty much incapable of categorizing it into any of my usual categories. It's set in 1893, and it's about a woman whose husband dies, and he was a shithead anyway. So she goes to Essex and kind of, I don't know, makes some friends. It's about a bunch of people living in this time period who all know each other, and the sort of thing that the story revolves around is Essex and this town called Old Winter, and like Cora Seaborn, who is this widow who is sort of delightful, in that now that her husband's dead, she's just like, you know what, I'm going to do all the things I wanted to do. I'm going to tramp around in men's boots and look at like little fucking ammonites and stuff that I find in the dirt. And the other main character is William Ransom, who is a parish vicar in Essex. And the two of them become friends, and they have this kind of strange connection, I don't know, and argue about a lot of things, and it's very dramatic. It isn't like a love story, although it almost becomes one at some points. But I liked it. Sorry, I was going to say what it revolves around. It revolves around this myth of the Essex serpent, which is like everybody in this town, a few kind of bad things have happened, and they're like blaming it all on this cryptid, basically. And Cora is like, ooh, what if the plesiosaur? And Ransom is like, it's stupid and it doesn't exist, you know? And it did take me until like 3/4 of the way through the book to decide whether I thought the serpent existed or not. I mean, because, you know, normally I would be inclined to say no, but it is a book, so who the fuck knows? But I thought it was really good. And the back says that it is most of all a celebration of love and the many different surprising guises it can take. And I'm like, yeah, I do buy that. If you read the back, you'd have no idea that there's this like several subplots, because they're just not mentioned in here. Like there's this subplot about like urban housing problems in London, and there's like a subplot about this brilliant surgeon he's in love with Cora, and weirdly I thought was the most interesting character at times. But yeah, I mean, it was good. Like, it's solid. I got it off somebody's like favorite books of last year list, so yeah, I'd recommend reading it. If that all sounds appealing to you. The book I just finished reading is Perdido Street Station by China Miéville. China Miéville is one of my favorite authors. I have kind of a long list of them, but he's one of the authors who I go back to several times a year, usually. Like, what else has he written? And I'm just working my way slowly through his bookography. That's not a word. All the books that he's written. This is one of his earlier ones. I really, really liked it. It's kind of steampunk fantasy, and it is long, and so it had a lot of time to just go completely apeshit in a whole bunch of ways. It's completely disgusting. Like, I don't think anything in the city that this is set in is ever clean or nice. Nothing is ever good. It's all just, like, gross at all times. But I enjoyed that, honestly. And when it's hard to explain the basic plot, I usually just start giving too much information. I don't want to do that. But in essence, it's about a scientist who dabbles in something called chaos theory. It's not like the real world chaos theory. It's like, he has this idea that it's not chaos. That's why it's coming out wrong. Crisis. That's what it's called. And he has this idea that if you could tap into something called crisis energy, you could do basically anything. And he gets hired by someone who wants him to restore the guy's ability to fly. But then some other completely crazy shit happens, and there's some like horrible monsters, and they spend most of the book dealing with that issue. So it's pretty great. Yeah, I really liked it. One of my favorite things about Mayville's books doesn't really apply to this one, oddly. Some of the other ones I've read, it can be difficult to get into them because the main character is always such an integral part, lives in their universe, obviously, and isn't inclined to explain any of it to the reader because, like, why would they? So you kind of flounder for a while trying to get a feel for everything. Like, I thought The City in the City was amazing, and I still can't really tell you what it was about. I mean, it's just like, okay, was the other city, like, was it real, or was it all, like, a mental thing? I don't know. Anyway, this one, though, actually is a lot more straightforward, weirdly enough. Like, there's not a lot of backstory given as to how this world came to be, but you kind of don't need it. You're just kind of like, okay, we're just going to accept this is the way things are, and have fun with it. It's really good. It's really good. Yeah. You should read it.